It was just a text. A simple, seemingly innocuous text from my mom that would turn everything upside down. Everyone's staying home due to the storm. Christmas dinner is cancelled. Stay safe. I stared at my phone. My fingers frozen over the screen. There it was. A cold, matter-of-fact message that, for most people, would be nothing more than a minor inconvenience. But for me, it felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. The disappointment hit first, sharp and immediate, but then, as I read it again, a cold sense of understanding started to settle in. Nashville winters can be unpredictable. I knew that. Ice storms were a genuine threat. And sometimes plans had to be changed at the last minute. But something about the timing of this particular storm, just hours before Christmas dinner, felt off. I wasn't surprised. Not really. It was just like every other year. My family had always had a way of making me feel like the odd one out. The quiet one. The responsible, career-driven sister who never seemed to fit into the chaos of their loud, boisterous gatherings. Emily, my younger sister, had always been the shining star. The one who could do no wrong in their eyes. The one they always made sure to include in everything. And then there was me. The one they tolerated. The one who never seemed to measure up. So when I read that text, part of me just knew, this wasn't just about a storm. This was the excuse. The perfect way to leave me out without having to face the truth. But at the same time, it felt different. The more I thought about it, the more it didn't sit right. I was disappointed, yes, but deep down I knew it was more than just a cancelled dinner. This was the family I had spent my whole life trying to fit into. Trying to earn their approval. The same family that had always made it clear I was never quite enough. It wasn't until hours later, as I tried to shake off the feeling of being excluded, that everything would start to unravel. What I didn't know then, what I couldn't have possibly predicted, was that this simple text would expose everything I had been blind to for years. And it would change my life forever. I spent the rest of Christmas Day alone. The storm was nowhere to be seen. But the loneliness had settled in as if it were the only guest at my table. I poured myself a mug of hot chocolate. Tried to get into the Christmas spirit by putting on a few holiday movies. But the quiet only deepened the ache. I was used to being the outsider in my family. But this year, it felt different. There was a heaviness in the air. A silence that I couldn't shake. I kept telling myself I was being silly. It was just a cancelled dinner. People had their lives, their own traditions. It wasn't a big deal. But the nagging feeling in the back of my mind refused to leave. Around 3 p.m., as I scrolled aimlessly through Instagram, my thumb stopped on a new post. My cousin, Lily, had shared something. A photo of my family. The caption was full of cheerful holiday cheer. So blessed to have everyone together. Family traditions. Christmas dinner at Emily's house this year. My heart dropped. There it was. A picture of my entire family. Smiling wide. All gathered around Emily's dining table. Perfectly dressed in their festive sweaters. My mother and father were there, of course. My aunts and uncles. Even my grandmother. They were all laughing. Enjoying a Christmas dinner I was never invited to. And as if that wasn't enough, I could see the windows in the background, clear, bright, and filled with sunlight. No storm, no snow, no ice. I felt a wave of nausea hit me as I scrolled through more photos. There was my dad, carving the turkey. There was my mom arranging her famous Christmas cookies. My little nieces and nephews were opening presents. Their faces lit with joy. The entire thing had been staged. Every last detail, except for me. The lie they'd told me wasn't just about a storm. It was a calculated move to exclude me. As the reality of it all sank in, my hands began to shake. It wasn't just this one dinner. It wasn't just this year. How many times had they done this? How many events had I been left out of? Told they were cancelled, only to find out later that everything had gone on without me? My stomach twisted into knots. They hadn't just forgotten about me. They'd made a choice. A deliberate choice to leave me out of the equation. I sat there for a while, staring at the pictures, trying to process the betrayal. How many times had I swallowed my hurt? Telling myself it was nothing? How many times had I convinced myself that I was overreacting? But now, looking at those photos, the truth was inescapable. The lies, the deception, the way I had been made to feel like I wasn't enough for them. Before I share what happened next, the moment that shattered everything, I want to connect with you. My amazing viewers, where are you watching from? Drop your country's flag in the comments below. And if you've ever had to fight for something you believe in, hit that like button, because this story is just getting started. The truth had hit me hard. And I wasn't going to let it slide anymore. This was the breaking point. This wasn't just about a cancelled dinner. This was about years of being overlooked, ignored, and excluded. I wasn't the problem. And soon, my family would know that I knew. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a message from my mom. I hesitated before answering, knowing exactly what I was about to hear. "Hi, honey. Hope you had a nice quiet Christmas. We missed you," she said, her voice on the other end of the line light and cheerful. As if nothing had happened. I felt the anger start to rise in me. But I kept my voice steady. "We missed you?" Was she really going to say that after everything? After the lies? It was like I wasn't even human to her anymore. Just a character in her script that could be edited out whenever it was convenient. I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm, but the truth hit me like a ton of bricks. For years, I had done everything to earn their approval. I had sacrificed so much. My dream of art school? Gone. Because accounting was more practical, they said. And even after that, I'd worked overtime to help pay off their mortgage. Always the dutiful daughter. Always the one to put in the extra effort. But never the one to get any recognition for it. Meanwhile, Emily, my free-spirited, careless sister, could do no wrong in their eyes. I tried to shove it all down. To convince myself it didn't matter. That family was family, and I had to accept them as they were. But now, looking at my mom's message, I realized how deeply wrong I had been. This wasn't just about being the quiet one. This was about a pattern of behavior that went much deeper than I had ever acknowledged. I remembered the time 3 years ago when Dad had needed surgery. I'd taken 3 weeks off work to help take care of him, cooking, cleaning, driving him to appointments, managing his meds. It wasn't easy, but I did it because I loved him. Emily showed up once, snapped a few selfies with him for Instagram, and then disappeared for a yoga retreat. Yet somehow, when my parents talked about that time, it was always Emily who was praised for being there, for being the supportive daughter, while my efforts were overlooked, downplayed, like they didn't even matter. The pieces started to fall into place. Every time I'd helped out, every time I'd been there for them, it felt like my contributions were taken for granted. On the other hand, Emily's minimal involvement, her 1 hour with Dad while I worked myself to the bone, was seen as noble. And then there was the constant reminder from my aunts at every family gathering, asking when I was going to loosen up and learn to enjoy life. My work accomplishments were always dismissed as boring, while Emily's latest adventure, teaching yoga in Bali or hiking through the mountains, was all anyone wanted to talk about. But I always told myself it didn't matter. I convinced myself that it was just family dynamics, that I was different, but that didn't mean they didn't love me in their own way. But now, looking back, I saw the truth. They didn't love me. They loved the idea of me, the daughter who kept quiet, the one who didn't rock the boat. But they didn't actually care about who I was or what I did. The truth stung. I had spent my whole life making excuses for them, making myself small so that they could feel comfortable in their expectations. I had told myself I didn't mind being the one left out, that as long as I helped and kept the peace, they would eventually appreciate me. But I realized now that the problem wasn't me, it was them. And I was done. I wasn't going to be their doormat anymore. It was time to stop pretending. Time to stop making excuses. And the moment I stopped justifying their behavior, everything became clear. They didn't just overlook me. They had intentionally excluded me from everything. They had made me feel like I was the problem. And now, I was finally ready to face that truth head on. The following days passed in a haze of disbelief and anger. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been stolen from me. Something far more significant than just my place at the Christmas table. As the days went on, I began to put the pieces together. I dug deeper, into old memories, old receipts, Anything I could find that would explain how I had been so blind for so long. Then, one afternoon, I came across something that made my stomach churn. It wasn't just the emotional betrayal, it was the financial betrayal. The inheritance. My inheritance. When my grandfather passed away years ago, he had left a significant sum of money for me, money meant for my education, for my future. He had made sure it was clear in his will. But the more I looked, the more I realized that this inheritance had never made it into my hands. In fact, it had been quietly siphoned off into Emily's accounts to fund her yoga retreats, her constant traveling, the lifestyle that everyone adored. I sat there, staring at the bank statements, my hands shaking. I had worked so hard for everything I had. I'd sacrificed my dreams for them. And all the while, they had been sitting on a pile of money that should have been mine, money that could have paid off my student loans, helped me start my own life. Instead, they used it to fund Emily's adventures, to fuel the image of the perfect family they had so carefully curated. I felt a rising sense of clarity and rage. All the times I had been pushed aside, all the events I had been told were cancelled or too small for me to attend, all the little comments about me being too quiet or too serious, it was all starting to make sense. This wasn't just about exclusion, this was a deliberate, orchestrated effort to keep me in the shadows. I couldn't just sit back and let this continue. It was time to do something about it. With the evidence in front of me, I knew I had to confront them. I wasn't going to let them continue to manipulate me, to use me for their benefit, all while keeping me in the dark. I wasn't going to be the one who always got the scraps while they feasted. I composed an email to my entire family, my parents, my sister, my aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone. I attached screenshots of the bank statements, photos, and text messages, proof of the lies they had fed me for years. I spelled it out, clear and direct. You lied to me. You excluded me. You used my money to fund Emily's lifestyle while I worked my fingers to the bone for you. The moment I hit send, a strange calm washed over me. It wasn't that I was satisfied, far from it. But I had done it. I had broken free from the web of lies they had spun around me. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I wasn't the problem anymore. I wasn't the one to blame. The truth was out. The responses came flooding in almost immediately, each one more defensive than the last. My Aunt Marie claimed they had just forgotten to tell me the plans had changed for Christmas. Uncle Robert insisted I was overreacting. Emily, of course, was quick to delete the photos and send me a message saying I was creating unnecessary drama. But it was my parents' responses that truly shocked me. Instead of any form of apology, they both went on the offensive. My mother began calling family friends, painting me as someone going through a phase, someone who couldn't handle the family dynamic. My father sent me an email, scolding me for airing our private business, claiming I was damaging the family's reputation. And then there was Emily. Her text message arrived with the same tone of accusation. You've really done it now, haven't you? Mom's crying. Everyone's upset. This is why we didn't want you at Christmas in the first place. I sat there, staring at my phone in disbelief. How was it possible? How could they twist the narrative so easily? I was the one who had been hurt, the one who had been left out. Yet somehow, I was now the villain? But I didn't back down. No matter how many times they tried to manipulate me into feeling guilty, I stood firm. I wasn't going to apologize. I wasn't going to accept their lies anymore. They had crossed a line. And I wasn't going to let them get away with it. And that was when I knew. For sure, I was done. I was done making excuses for them. I was done being their punching bag. This wasn't just about one holiday, one family dinner. It was about years of being ignored, used, and lied to. It was about time I took control. The silence after I hit send was deafening. I sat there, staring at my screen, waiting for the storm to break. It didn't take long. The messages came pouring in, each one more defensive, more enraged than the last. My mother's voice, usually so composed, was now trembling with anger. How dare you do this? Why are you airing our dirty laundry for everyone to see? My father's words were cold, a stark contrast to the warmth I had always tried to give them. You've crossed a line. Catherine, this is unacceptable. And then there was Emily. As expected, crying foul. This is just what we needed. More drama from you. It was all the same. The same tired excuses. The same accusations. They were good at this. Good at twisting the truth. At making me the villain in a story where I had only ever been trying to make sense of the lies. But this time, I didn't flinch. I didn't apologize. The truth was finally out in the open. And I was done playing their game. I knew the fight wasn't over yet. Though, this wasn't a family who would back down quietly. I had expected retaliation, but nothing could have prepared me for how far they were willing to go to maintain their perfect facade. It didn't take long for the legal threats to start. My father, ever the lawyer, sent me a stern letter demanding I take everything back or face consequences. He accused me of slander, of ruining the family's reputation. And as much as I wanted to ignore him, I knew this was far from over. They would never accept responsibility. Not willingly. They never had. And then came the personal attacks. My mother, desperate to regain control, began showing up unannounced at my workplace, causing scenes in the lobby, shouting at my colleagues. She even had the nerve to tell them that I was having a breakdown and that I needed help. Emily, in her usual way, posted vague updates on social media, calling me toxic, claiming that I was the one who had ruined everything. She said that I hadn't learned to put the family first. It felt like the walls were closing in. The pressure was immense, but it only solidified my resolve. They were desperate to preserve their image at any cost. Even if it meant making me look crazy, making me the problem. But what they didn't realize was that by trying to discredit me, they were only proving everything I had said. The more they fought back, the more they showed their true colors. I knew I had one shot at making them understand the weight of what they had done. It wasn't just about the money, or the lies, or even the betrayal. It was about them continuing to use me, to manipulate me into accepting their version of the truth they had so carefully crafted over the years. I had to make them face the consequences of their actions. I spent the next week preparing, gathering everything I could, every document, every piece of evidence, every record of their deceit. I contacted a lawyer, Sarah, who specialized in financial fraud. She was calm, methodical, exactly what I needed. This is a clear case of exploitation, she confirmed after reviewing the materials. You've got a strong case. We can take this to the authorities. I didn't hesitate. It was time. I arranged a meeting with my parents and Emily. I had all the evidence ready, every bank statement, every email, every legal document. They thought they had all the power, that they could control the narrative. But I was going to give them a choice: admit what they had done, or face the consequences. The day of the meeting, I could barely contain my calm. I had arranged the folders on my dining table, one for each of them. Inside each folder were copies of everything I had found. I slid them across the table, one by one. Before any of you say another word, I said, my voice steady, unwavering, I suggest you read these. The color drained from my father's face as he scanned the documents. Emily's hands started to tremble. My mother tried to maintain her composure, but I could see the panic in her eyes. She was already trying to come up with an excuse. I could tell. This is ridiculous, she said, voice tight. You're trying to blackmail your own family? I let out a short, bitter laugh. No, I said coldly. I'm giving you a choice. Return what you stole, or I'll let the authorities handle it. Emily burst into tears, but I didn't feel any sympathy. She had known what was going on. She had been part of it all. My mother tried to take a different approach. Think about what this will do to the family. What will people think? I wasn't interested in what people would think anymore. You should have thought about that before you stole from me, I replied, my voice firm. Before you lied to me. Over and over again. You've had your chance to make it right. Now you don't get to choose anymore. The tension in the room was unbearable. I could see the panic rising in their eyes. They were cornered, and they knew it, but I wasn't done yet. I wasn't going to let them twist the narrative one more time. You have 48 hours. I said, looking each of them in the eye. Return everything you took, or I'll go to the police. Your choice. They left in a hurry, panic written all over their faces. Within hours, I received a flurry of messages from the family group chat. Relatives who had always sided with them suddenly changed their tune, all blaming me for what had happened. But this time, I wasn't backing down. The truth was out, and I wasn't going to let them rewrite it. As I waited for their decision, I knew in my gut what was coming. They wouldn't admit to their wrongdoings. They wouldn't take responsibility. And when they didn't, I was ready. The 48-hour deadline passed, and I filed the charges. I had already taken every step to make sure they couldn't hide anymore. The morning after the deadline, I watched from my office as the police showed up at their door with search warrants. The world they had so carefully built around their lies was crumbling. Piece by piece, my father was escorted from his workplace in handcuffs. Emily's yoga studio was seized as an asset. My mother was arrested during one of her charity meetings. It felt surreal, watching the downfall of a family that had meant everything to me. But even though the fallout was immense, I felt no joy. There was no sense of victory. There was only relief. Finally, the truth had come to light. Finally, I was free. 1 year later, I sat in my new home, far from the chaos, the snow gently falling outside my window. The court case had concluded, and my parents had taken plea deals. They would pay restitution. Emily's yoga empire had crumbled, and she was working a regular job now. No longer the golden child. The relatives who had supported them for so long stopped speaking to me. But surprisingly, I didn't miss them. I had built a new life. With new friends, new colleagues who valued me for who I was, not for what they could use me for. And as I sat there, reflecting on everything that had happened, I realized the most important thing of all. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting free. 1 year later, I sat in my new home, far from the chaos, the snow gently falling outside my window. The legal battles had concluded, and my parents had taken plea deals, agreeing to pay restitution. Emily's yoga empire had crumbled, and she was working a regular job now. No longer the golden child. The relatives who had supported them for so long stopped speaking to me. But surprisingly, I didn't miss them. I had built a new life. With new friends, new colleagues who valued me for who I was, not for what they could use me for. And as I sat there, reflecting on everything that had happened, I realized the most important thing of all. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting free. If you've ever faced struggles in your family and found a way to break free, I'd love to hear your story. Drop a comment below and share your journey with us. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, so you never miss a new story. Join our community, where we learn, grow, and support one another.